This is Social Leopards. I'm Bee.
And I'm Beth. A leopard is a solitary creature living in the jungle, but often not seen or noticed. Are you a solitary creature trying to navigate the social jungle?
This show explores loneliness and the many ways forward. Welcome to Social Leopards.
Hey everybody. Today we are here to chat with Anthony Church. We're going to talk about his personal relationship with loneliness and how he found ways forward. By way of introduction, I'm going to nickname him the Triple I guy. I met Anthony on Threads and Instagram, and we've been conversing for, several months, right, Anthony?
Yeah, it's been probably 2 or 3 months. It was probably November, maybe, beginning of November. So
that sounds about right. Yep. And I find him intelligent, interesting, and inspired. I'm not going to spoiler alert, I'm going to let him talk in a minute, but his first love is music, and hopefully we'll talk about that a little bit. And it's very apparent when you do visit his Instagram account. You have a YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, Anthony Church Beats is the YouTube channel. So
okay.
I saw that,
Yep.
yeah.
And I'll make sure I put all of that in the show notes at the end. And he also produces little shorts that really caught my attention. So Anthony, again, welcome to the Social Leopards podcast. Give us a brief introduction and share what inspired you to start making these videos and anything else that you want to share at this point.
Yeah, for sure. Again, thank you for having me, first of all, and getting in touch with me. And I think it was cool to just stumble upon your platform, and I noticed the kind of content you were putting out, and I was like, I would love to be a part of that. So I'm happy to be here. But like you said, you gave a great introduction for me, so I appreciate that. The Triple I thing, that was interesting. I've never heard that, but that means a lot. But yeah, I've been making music now for 9 years this year. Started producing for my friend who I grew up with, and we still work together. But we just shared a love for music, and we ended up beginning together, and we've been working ever since. And then that led me to creating for other artists around the world, independent artists mostly, doing my own music as well. I do a lot of instrumental music myself. So I've been doing that. And then that led me into also the world of podcasting a few years ago. During the pandemic, I started the Proven Knowledge podcast, started interviewing artists, producers, engineers, just different creatives every single week. And that was a cool endeavor that I ended up starting on. But it's just led me to work with a lot of amazing people and just meet a lot of cool people and have great conversations. And as far as the content that you mentioned, which is more of like the inspirational stuff, I'll post YouTube shorts, some Instagram reels, just anything that I feel could help people. I just do that. And it's usually things that are related to myself, my own life, and my own journey. Like, for example, a couple hours ago, I just did one on seasonal depression. I posted that just to see what kind of comments I would get from it, see if anybody can relate to it. And a lot of times those are the posts that get the most engagement too, because they're very relatable to other people. And it's just another way to give back. I think what I've found from even just having conversations with different people is that you can accomplish a lot more through having those tough discussions. It's not always easy to do, to put yourself out there in that way. But I found like each step of my own journey, I want to continue to put myself out there more and just see who I can help along the way. And so anything I can do, any part I can play, that's what I aim to do.
So what do you think one of the toughest discussions you've had thus far has been?
Yeah, I think it was really
Like what?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, good.
No, all good. I think even when I got in touch with you about being on your platform, it was really what I had done a few weeks prior to that, which was I did a Twitch stream about my struggles with social anxiety. And I actually came up with talking about that around the time I decided to do these workshops on Twitch. I've been doing these every Tuesday, and some of them are like directly related to music content. So it's like giving advice to independent artists or resources, things like that. But other discussions are more personal to me, like things I've dealt with and things that, like I said, I feel if other people have dealt with, maybe I can give my experience and it'll help them out. So that was definitely something that I felt it was going to be very vulnerable to do. But if I give my experience, how can this affect somebody else? And when I put that out, I actually had a lot of people like talk about it, message me about it, and say, thank you for putting yourself out there in that way, because I struggle with this in my own way. And my own family even was talking to me about it. And they were like, we didn't even know that you were dealing with this stuff. we're happy that you were able to talk about it and be more open. And I'm the type of person where I'm probably not always going to be like super open directly to somebody about it. I feel like being able to have a platform of my own or just my own space to get the ideas out and get the thoughts off my chest, that's really where I thrive the most. So I think just being able to do that was a big thing and do it. And it felt great to get that stuff out in the open. But I use that as a way to give people resources on how they can deal with it in
Mm-hmm.
their own way too, because obviously every individual, even if they're dealing with similar things, it might be a little bit different on a case by case basis. So like my way of
Oh,
dealing with
yeah.
things might not be the same as somebody else's. But just trying to give people healthy alternatives because a lot of people can cope with things in unhealthy ways. Like how can we get people to find the ways that are not going to be destructive to their health and being? So that was a big thing too in there. But just, I think that was just me trying to do my part and just be honest about my
Mm-hmm.
situation and what I've dealt with for a long time now. So,
So talk to me a little bit about when you first started to understand that you had anxiety. Is it limited to social anxiety or is it anxiety in general?
yeah. So really just being able to research more about it in the last 4 or 5 years, I limited it down to or narrowed it down to that it was mostly social anxiety because I really developed the most of the symptoms of having it. I'd say when I noticed that it started was when I was still in school. I'd say it was really around like middle school time because I feel like as a child, as a younger kid, I was a very like outgoing kid. I was like the class clown for a while, like growing up. So I would always like make jokes and like talk in class and things like that. I think middle school, I don't know, I always look at middle school as a very dark time because that's that weird phase of childhood where your brain's not fully developed yet and you're like trying to get to the next stage to where you're going to be
Mm-hmm.
almost an adult. So it's a weird time. You're getting to meet a lot of new kids, and kids can be mean at times, and you're trying to find your friends. It's a lot of emotions. And I think for me, I struggled during that like phase of my life when I was 12, 13, 14, just trying to figure out what I was going to do. And then also trying to figure out like, what did I want to do with my life? I didn't really know. Even in high school, I was still trying to figure out like, what was I going to do with my life? And that's where I noticed the change in myself. I wouldn't really be outgoing anymore. I wouldn't try to make a lot of friends. I was lucky enough to have a nice solid group of friends. A lot of them I'm still friends with today, which is nice because a lot of people you're friends with in school, you might not be friends with after the fact.
That's
But
true.
luckily, yeah,
Yeah.
luckily we've been able to stay in touch. We've been out of school now for almost 10 years, but we still talk. Even if we don't see each other a lot, we still talk in our group chat and text and things of that nature. So we do our part to stay in each other's lives and things like that. And I've been blessed to say that. But I think in school, just in general, I would just stay to myself, stay in my own little world. And it really hasn't evolved much from there. I think what helped give me the confidence of being able to get out of the shell was finding my passion through music, through art and things of that nature, because I was able to use those outlets to help communicate with other people. And I'm still I still feel like I'm in the bubble of, I can't small talk a lot with people. I can't have what I would consider like normal conversations with people without feeling just super awkward or strange about it. Even when I'm at like my day job, I have troubles communicating here and there with people. I just am quiet, reserved, stay to myself. But if someone was to talk to me about music or one of my interests, I'd probably be a lot more inclined to engage with them. If they're trying to talk to me about like their kids or their family
Mm-hmm.
life or something, I'm not going to know what to, I'm just going to be like, awesome, good for you. 'Cause that's just how it is for me. And like I said, 4 or 5 years ago, I had some time on my hands and I researched social anxiety. What are the symptoms of it? And a lot of it is things that I have felt before, like just feeling very tense and not really relaxed in those situations, not knowing what to say, having sweaty palms, or just like feeling super embarrassed or awkward. Everybody's looking at you. That's a big thing. So I just realized that was where I fell into, and I don't take any medication for it. I don't have anything that I do to really cope with it. But I think that just being able to push through and realize that it's okay. It's not like something that is a disease that like you can't get through on your own is a big
No,
thing.
there is a genetic predisposition for social anxiety. You've probably come across the research, but what you're doing is actually, you found this yourself, a very common therapeutic technique, which they just call basically flooding. You're going out and you're forcing yourself to push through and just keep going. So I'm very impressed with what you've done. You should be so proud of yourself.
I appreciate
And
that. Go ahead.
I noticed that you said that your superpower is persistence. So how does that persistence play a role in what you're doing?
Yeah, I think the persistence just comes with being able to keep showing up and just keep being persistent and consistent with the persistency. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
goes a lot into what I do in creative works, whether it is music or the podcast or things like that. But as far as like how it deals with having social anxiety, I think it's what you just said, which is you're pushing through every single day. It gets easier the more you go. And that's something that I've said in a lot of the content that I've made recently, even if it's not directly related to that, is just telling people the more you show up and the more you get in the habit of doing these things, it does become easier. Because if I was to go back like 10, 15 years ago, I probably wouldn't be able to do any of the things I'm doing now. But it was about developing self confidence, understanding that I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing in my life to not only help myself, but like I said, help other people. If you're living your purpose, you're much more, it's going to be much more easy to show up every single day and just keep going. So that's really why I think persistence is my superpower. And obviously there's always room for improvement because you can always do a little bit more today than you did yesterday or that you did a month ago and so on and so forth. So I'm just, happy to wake up every day and be able to do something I enjoy, even if it's for a little bit at a time. Like I said, I got jobs, I got other things in life I have to do, but if I can make some time to create or just make something that will inspire someone else, that's the biggest gift that any of us have to be able to give back in that way.
That's really great. Thank you for sharing that with us, Anthony. I do want to talk about your music for just a few moments. I had the pleasure of listening to some of it. And how would you describe your genre? Because I know it's instrumental. I'm just going to be honest, and I know a lot about music, but when I try to put music into a genre, I don't really like where would I go
Yeah.
if I was in an old fashioned record store to find your music?
Yeah. So I'd say honestly, my music it's a lot of hip hop, R&B, and some lo-fi all mixed together. I think I'm with you. I don't really like classifications a lot. I don't really like pigeonholing things into genres per se. I think people do that a lot more than they probably should, especially nowadays where a lot of people are combining genres together. They're taking a lot of what older genres did and they're just making their own thing out of it. And a lot more people make music now than they did 50, 60 years ago because it's more accessible now. So I think hopefully we move to a point where genres aren't as prevalent. Obviously, each genre is pretty unique and it has its own flavors and things like that. So it's still cool. But I think the genres, they do pigeonhole people a little bit. But I'd say what I try to do, no matter what the style is, even if it's not my own music that I'm putting out, if it's something I'm producing for someone else, I'm trying to capture a certain feeling. I just wanted to evoke some type of emotion. If you hear a song that I was a part of, hopefully it makes you think of a time of your life, whether it's happy, sad, whatever the feeling might be. Hopefully it just takes you to that place and lets you just escape for a little bit. So that's really what I try to do. I think that's what a lot of the producers that I looked up to or just listened to over the years have done. And that's just what I try to do in whatever way that might come.
What's interesting, you said that when I was going through a really tough time in my life, I couldn't listen to certain songs because they would trigger such intense emotions. And maybe I'm like a person that's like my psychic feeling is like a feeler. If I go somewhere and the environment isn't good or right, I can't be in there, I'm uncomfortable, that kind of thing. And I work in a profession I'm in a helper profession anyway, but it's so interesting that you talk about that because yes, and I tend to really enjoy upbeat music. And my friends make fun of me because I like disco and I like anything that's happy and I just struggle with anything that will hit a sad nerve. So yeah,
Yeah.
totally
And
relate to all that.
I think that's the beauty of music too, is that there's different styles for every feeling. And sometimes you want to just throw on some happy music and just feel good
Mm-hmm.
for a while. And then other times if you're feeling more somber, maybe it's good to listen to that type of somber music to let out that emotion, because it almost feels like a good
True.
release to have. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really what it's always
Mm-hmm.
been for me. Like my whole life growing up is just different music for different like stages of life. And that's really just
Mm-hmm.
what attracted me to wanting to make music, was just the feeling that I got from hearing other people's music. And I was like, that would be cool to do that for someone else one day, to make them feel something too, no matter what that
Mm-hmm.
feeling is.
Yeah.
So, how old do you think you were when you knew that music was your path?
Yeah, I honestly, I wasn't that young at the time. When I wanted to pursue it, I was probably like 16, 17, and I didn't end up actually starting until I was 19. So a little bit later. There's people that obviously are pretty much born like playing instruments coming up, and then they just keep going. I tried guitar lessons when I was like super young, and I didn't last at all. My mom signed me up for guitar lessons, and I probably went for 2 months, and that just wasn't for me. I was more of, let me go ride my bike, play basketball, just do other things. I didn't really have an interest in it. And I was in choir too for a few years in high school and middle school. I just didn't enjoy that at all. That was not for me. So I really didn't know what I was going to do. But when I discovered music production, that was something that I felt like I could do, just because it was a little bit more accessible and it looked like it was a little easier to learn. And like I said earlier, I had a buddy who, we were already fans of music, and we had been friends for years, and we both agreed to start at the same time. So we ended up agreeing that he would be rapping and I would be producing. And we just started learning together after high school and just making songs that sounded really bad. And then we started getting a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. And you just keep working at it. And that's where the work pays off, is when you continue to be consistent and keep showing up and just learning new things. And I still feel like I'm getting better 9 years later now. It's, you never stop learning and trying to get better. But yeah, it was pretty much like 17, 18, 19, around those years, right before I graduated high school. And right when I graduated, that was when I knew that I was going to pursue making music. So,
Awesome. I think B and I have very similar conversations about our podcast.
Yeah.
How it's an evolution, right?
It is,
Yep.
definitely.
With experience and time comes kind of different layer. And
Yeah.
then layer by layer, you start to feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
And the same thing's true with loneliness and social anxiety, I think, for some people. And you made a comment earlier about how every experience is very unique. You can't put it in a box and say everyone who has social anxiety is going to respond this way, or everyone who experiences these feelings, you can fix it by doing Y or Z. I think everyone has their own journey. So it was interesting that you picked up on that all on your very own through whatever research you did. Bravo to you again for using your superpower of persistence to keep going and to make a difference in your own life. Is there any advice that you would give someone who was struggling with social anxiety personally? If one of your best friends was talking to you about it, how would you coach them, or what advice would you give?
Yeah, I'm always hesitant on giving advice, I guess. It's more of, I think I can just give my own experience, and then whatever they do with it is up to them. Because I always find, like, when people give advice or they get advice, if the advice doesn't work out, they're going to blame the person that gave them the advice.
true.
And you got to realize, like we just said, it's a case by case basis. I more so got to the point now where I'm just like, let me tell you how it worked out for me, and you can do with that whatever you want. But I think something I would say is, don't be afraid to do a lot of inner work on yourself and figure out who you are and what your tendencies are, how you communicate with people, and don't always cast blame on other people and how they act in any type of social setting. Like, really look inward and say, how am I actually approaching the situation? Could I improve in these areas? Because at the end of the day, you can only really work on yourself and how you can get better. And don't be hard on yourself either, because I think a lot of people are very hard on themselves and they kick themselves when they're in a situation and they feel like they could have handled it better. I've done that before too, just been very hard on myself. And I realized that if you can just put your best foot forward, that's all you can do. And you can just control that part of it and just see where it goes. But like we said, every interaction, hopefully it gets a little bit more comfortable for you and how you handle it and where you go from there. But yeah, I think it's just give people your experience and be honest about your experience and then see what they do with it and how they apply it in their own life from there. I think that's what I would tell anyone.
Yeah.
Do you think that you stopped comparing your reactions to other people's reactions, and did that ever enter into your progress with your social anxiety?
Yeah, I think you can't compare because at that point, then you're trying almost to live that person's life in a way where it's like you only have your life. That's all that you have, and that's all you can control at the end of the day. So you really can't compare. I don't think I ever got to the point where I was comparing on that level. I would almost just look at people who were very comfortable and very sociable people, and I would just say, man, I wish I could react or respond in the ways that they did. But then you understand that, again, you're not that person, you are you. So just take the steps and focus on yourself and how you can get better and how you can feel better. It's not really about like how are other people viewing you. It's more of you got to have the self confidence to view yourself in that good light and just feel confident or feel more confident. I mean, even if it's never going to be perfect, which it's never going to be perfect, you're always working on these things. You can feel a lot better on the day to day and just being able to chat with different people and feel good about who you are. That's the big thing.
Talk to us a little bit about the post. Today is the day that we're recording, which is not anywhere close to the day that we will be airing this episode. But if anyone's listening and they want to go look at Anthony's post and comment, I'm sure even if it's much later, today is January 18th. And again, look in the show notes for his socials. And I saw the post on Instagram. So tell us a little bit more about what inspired you to post today's short. Was it a
Yes.
reel?
Yeah, it was a reel and it was an extension of another Twitch stream workshop that I did on seasonal depression. And that was actually the first one I did a couple weeks ago to kick off the new year. So I took a couple weeks off of doing the stream. And that was when I started with because it's winter time and this is where seasonal depression really kicks in for a lot of people. And basically, I actually recorded that reel a while ago because I usually plan my social media content a few months in advance. So I probably did the reel even before I decided to do the stream, but it's like they go hand in hand and they're just different forms of content. But essentially, I'm not really one myself who has dealt with seasonal depression a ton. I used to deal with it more when I was younger. I feel like now I don't really notice it that much. Obviously, I'm a fan of warm weather. Don't get me wrong. I'm a fan of longer days, more sunshine. And I live in Ohio where we have
That's right.
horrible weather. We, we don't really see the sun that much to begin with up here, especially in the winter time. You might see it like once or twice a month, especially in January and February. So I understand that it affects the people differently. And I wanted to do something to address what does that mean for creatives and musicians. So the workshop was all about how does it affect creative people. And I found articles that I used to help guide the stream. And some of them talked about being able to make certain type of content during the winter months. For example, I found a blog post by an artist who discussed herself having seasonal depression and what she would do to cope with it and get through it in a good way was she would paint very vibrant, warm feeling art. So she went into the descriptions of like her color selection. She was picking warm colors only. She would paint like a meadow in the summertime and describe like how she felt just doing that and things like that. So I like would use those articles as guidance and then talk about how does that relate to music? Like maybe you could make more vibrant music during this time of the year Or just if you're a writer, you could write certain ideas that kind of bring you to that place mentally. And those types of things help out. But it was really just because I know a lot of people can deal with that. Even people that aren't creatives just deal with it every single day. Because, like we said, the days get shorter this time of year. There's less sunlight. It's a lot colder. Depending on where you live, you got snow, you got rain a lot. And even just the fact that the lack of sunlight on anyone is going to affect them, it's going to affect your internal clock and it's going to affect how you feel, just the lack of sunlight alone. So I just wanted to do my part to help out the people that are really affected by seasonal depression. I felt like putting it out now made sense because we're in that peak time. So that's what I did. And I might even do one in the future that's even more expanded or just like a different side of the idea of it and just see what else I can find because the possibilities are pretty much endless for the research on that and what I found. And yeah, it was pretty much just another idea that I thought would be cool for people to be tapped in with.
Yeah, I really like it.
Yeah. It's interesting that you choose to address these types of topics. As an artist, you hear a lot about tortured artists, right? And I'm thinking about one of the iconic songwriters, Billy Joel, who it seems like a lot of his quote best music was when he was unhappy and when he was struggling, and some very powerful music about times of war and times of unrest in the world. And then my least favorite music that he made was when he was married to Christy Brinkley. And it was very happy and upbeat, and I hated it all because it wasn't him, right? And so I know, I don't know what this has to do with the topic of the day, but it just got me to thinking about how artists are very emotional people in general. And so I'm sure you come across, even in your interviews, people struggling with all sorts of emotions. And so I just find it very interesting then that you have this little side thing that you're doing where you're talking about emotion and you're talking about things that are difficult for people and trying to get them to open up and be vulnerable about how they're feeling in the moment. I don't know if that was part of your inspiration or if it's just coincidental, or have you given any thought to that at all?
Yeah, I definitely have thought that before myself as well, because there is a lot of quotes that say the best art comes from struggle, no matter what it is. And it's crazy because we think about art and we're like, we love art so much. But if the best art comes from struggle, then it's like we can't have the good without the bad. It's like that those two worlds always coinciding with one another. But I've definitely heard that from definitely a lot of different people in a lot of different ways about how when everything's going great, you might not even be inspired to make art because everything's going great. But then when things aren't going so well, you feel more like you need to channel it into something creative, make a song or draw or write a poem or whatever it is. And then people relate to that because we all have our own struggles in our own ways. And then when you see this piece of art or you experience this piece of art, you feel what that person felt at the time when they made it. So it's just very interesting things to think about because I think we always want things to go well and we want things to be at peace. But then we look at it on the other side, it's we wouldn't be able to experience a lot of this art without that. So it's just I've always thought about how fascinating that is, and we can't really understand it. I don't think we're really meant to understand it, but it's just life. It's just how life works out. But I think that that does go a lot into why I post those sorts of things. And like you said, I definitely have experienced people through people's stories, the struggles that they've dealt with, whether it's personal or maybe it's on the career side, if they're struggling to get their name out there as an artist, or maybe they want to take the next step and they don't really know how to do that. And they're working through those things. My favorite thing that I've done so far is have people come on the podcast like 2 or 3 years later. We'll do a part 2 episode. And then that's really cool because we can recap what we talked about the first time. And I usually ask them, what were your goals 2 years ago? And do you think you got to those goals? Or do you think you're still reaching for those? And a lot of the times you get a lot of cool responses on how their life changed so much in the last couple of years because they took action on what they were trying to do. And then sometimes other people's situations might change and it might take them on a whole new path. And maybe their new goal is something even greater. So I've been enjoying doing that because I started doing the part two episodes a couple of years ago. So I always like having return guests just to catch up with them and see how is their creative journey going, but how is like the journey of life going, and just ask those questions and see what I can find. But yeah, I think it all goes hand in hand, really. And being a creative, you are an emotional person, so you have to figure out ways to get those things out there. And as much as we can learn through music, and as much as music has helped me, I know that conversations help even more. So if I can be vulnerable and put myself out there, why not me? You know what I mean? Because like I said earlier, I can take action on myself and my life and what I do. So if no one else does it, it's okay because I can do that. I can put myself in those spots.
So do you feel better when you're creating music? Does that change how you feel inside?
Yeah, music is definitely something I enjoy doing, and that's why I've continued on. I've always said if it ever becomes not enjoyable, I won't do it anymore. But it's no different than anything else. There's a lot of things that we have to do on the day to day that we might not necessarily want to do. So it's always important to keep something involved that you want to do, that you enjoy doing, no matter what that is. So for me, that's music. One of those things is making music. And I definitely love doing it every single day still. And like I said, it's been almost 10 years now, and it's a great outlet to do. Even if I don't have anything specific to work on, I'll just go and make a random idea. And usually I wake up and I'm ready to create something. So even if it's something small, put those ideas out there and just, it's good to just do it with no purpose sometimes. You just get in the habit of creating. And yeah, I definitely love it. And I'd say that's the main driver for me on the day to day. But if it ever becomes not enjoyable, I'll just find something else I love to do. That's really
Well,
the journey
and
of life.
sorry, and I'm really impressed that you found something that you enjoy so much. And what advice could you give us to try to help us find something like that? What do you think we could do?
Yeah. I think it's just about asking yourself the internal questions of what brings you joy and really just experimenting with different outlets, trying new things out. Like I said earlier, I played sports for a little bit. I enjoyed that to an extent, but there became a time where I stopped enjoying doing that, and I just didn't really have the love for it anymore. So I just moved to the next thing. I think the thing that becomes that passion though finds you as well, because you can search for it all you want, but sometimes it doesn't. If you're trying to force it, it might not happen the way you imagine. I feel like the things that are meant for you will find you in a weird way at a weird time of your life. I think just keep searching and just keep trying different things. It never hurts to try. I for one, I can't draw or like paint for anything to save my life, but even if I wanted to just do it, I would still just sit down and draw or make a piece of art, because why not? But you don't have to show it to anyone. You don't have to try to sell your art. Like you could just make it just because you wanted to, and that could just be your thing. So it's just identifying what you want to do and how you want to incorporate your passions into your day to day life. But just have fun with it and keep the fun involved and try things. That's the biggest thing. Try things.
What great advice. I really appreciate it.
So what's next for Anthony Church?
I don't know. A lot of different things. I definitely have things planned for this year as far as like music I'm releasing, collaborations I'm doing, and still producing for other artists. I'm still continuing the podcast. I put out new episodes every Tuesday. So always talking to different creatives, but overall just continuing to elevate and move forward in my journey and just keep finding different ways to give back and help other people. I think at the end of the day, like I said, I do it for me, obviously, because that's a big thing, but I do it also to inspire others in whatever way I can, even if it's pretty small. You can have an impact on people. So that's really what it's going to be, what it's been, and what it's going to be moving forward. But musically, a couple albums I'm going to be doing this year, solo albums, and like I said, just keep collaborating and working with a lot of cool people, and a lot of exciting things to come. So I'm thrilled, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how the journey for myself keeps evolving.
Awesome. And why don't you plug your podcast one more time? We will again have it in the show notes, but I'll give you a chance to just give us the deets.
Yeah. So again, it's called the Proven Knowledge Podcast. It's a music interview series. So if you're a fan of hearing artist stories, producers, engineers, just people that are involved in the music space, definitely check it out. The episode's every Tuesday and it's on all podcast platforms. So go ahead and check that out.
Awesome. Thank you.
And before we go, 2 questions. 1, what do you do every night before you go to sleep?
What do I do every night before I go to sleep? I think about what I have to do when I wake up. Whether that's good or bad, I guess that's what I do.
That's great.
Yeah.
Maybe that keeps you organized, right? And motivated.
A little bit,
I
yeah.
like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the second one is, what, if anything, do you feel like you have to let go of this year to make room for something else?
Definitely letting go of being in a comfort zone. One thing I learned a lot last year was you're going to get pushed out of your comfort zone, even if you don't want to be. So you got to really learn to embrace that more. So that's really what I would say is going to be something I want to do moving forward. And what was the second part of the question?
No, it's just something that you're just going to let go of so you can make room for something else.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say that's the big
Yeah.
one.
I like that.
So.
Yeah.
I love it. That's a great answer. 2 great answers, I
Yep.
think. Now, see, me thinking about what was happening tomorrow would put me into stress mode, but
That's right.
I'm not judging.
Like I said, it's for
I
good
can
or for bad.
see-
It's not always good.
Yes.
Yeah, I can see how it would be helpful if it's more from just like trying to get my act together and know where I'm going to be tomorrow and psych yourself up. So I love it. Yep. All right. Thank you so much for your time today. It has been great.
Yep.
This is Social Leopards, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, Social Leopards. Don't slink back into the jungle quite yet. We have 2 important messages to share. First, remember to like this episode, drop us a comment, and if you haven't done it yet, follow this show or subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can reach us on social media. You can also email share@socialleopards.com to contact us privately. All links are in the show notes. We love and appreciate hearing from those who listen to the show.
Second, we want you to know that this show is not intended to be a replacement for professional therapy. If you are struggling or if you need to interact with another person, check out the show notes for resources. Thanks for listening.